Good afternoon. This is your Tropical Outlook and Discussion product for Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. The current time is 6:41 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Taking a look across the Atlantic Basin, the Caribbean, and the Gulf of Mexico, all is relatively tranquil for the time being. However, there are several areas of interest that I am seeing at this point in time that we need to keep an eye on as we progress through the period. First and foremost, this little parcel of energy right here near the coast of Nicaragua is actually progged to come inland, cross across the Yucatan, and emerge into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, there are several different options as far as how this could play out. This could take a little bit more of a westward trek and hug the coastline, or perhaps be just inland on the coast of Mexico on the Gulf side. Or this could actually cross over, catch a little bit more momentum, and enter into the Gulf of Mexico with minimal land interaction. A lot of the model data at this point in time is actually suggesting the aforementioned, with this remaining at least close to the coast of Mexico or perhaps just offshore. And this would help mute the impacts, and this would take this into Mexico a little early. However, if this system is able to emerge into the Gulf of Mexico in a little bit more open sea, this would present a potential coastal threat for Texas. So this needs to be watched over the coming 2 to 3 days. And we're going to take a look at that in a little bit more detail here momentarily. Another area of interest is obviously this very large complex of shower and thunderstorm activity that is associated with an upper level low that is about to emerge into the eastern Atlantic off the coast of Africa. This will be the gatekeeper, so to speak, as this transfers across the Atlantic through the main development region. This here will help erode a little bit of this dry air that remains in place that could potentially bleed into areas down here. That would allow the corridor to be open for the main development region. And the model data does substantiate this, as this does start to show a lot more in the way of repeated activity, a few rapid fire systems coming off the coast of Africa, entering the main development region. And some of the model data, which has been consistent now for about the past 24 to 36 hours, so we're starting to get a little bit of run-to-run consistency, albeit still in fantasy range, is representing the possibilities for some tropical activity, including, the GFS is actually repping a couple possible hurricanes out there as well. So these are things that we need to watch as we get into the last week of August and then close in on the first week of September. So it looks like the lull, as far as the tropics are concerned, is coming to an end, and probably in rapid fire fashion. Other areas of interest to keep an eye on, and just loosely, there's absolutely nothing concrete regarding this. This little parcel of energy right here on the Gulf Coast could potentially take on a life of its own if it's able to get out in here. These shelf waters here are very, very warm. That's a lot of latent energy potential. It's a lot of upper ocean heat content available, and that looks like if something were going to happen, it would happen in rapid fire fashion as it comes off the coast. So while it doesn't look like much right now, while the model data doesn't represent much, this is something we could keep an eye on. We've seen this happen in the past. Typically this time of the year, September, possibly October. Those are times that things like that can happen. And these little parcels of energy can break off of these systems, come out here, take on a life of their own, circle right back around and come into the coast. So this is a time that we kind of need to have our guard up. Now, obviously, there's nothing imminent, but keeping the guard up would be a good idea. Anybody that remembers, we were discussing the tropical upper tropospheric trough yesterday, the TUT. And that looks like, as of today's analysis, that looks like that is really starting to wane. And it looks like the impacts are becoming less pronounced, and its definition is also less pronounced as well. So this is definitely the tides of change moving in. Moving on, we're going to take a look at the slice from the goes east sector. And this is going to show moist and dry imbalances in the atmosphere. So as we take a look at this, here's a nice pool of dry air. But if we take a look, we see all this moisture just off the coast of Africa, and this should help erode this dry air here in due time. And this was not the picture that we were looking at a week and a half ago when we were commenting and discussing how quiet the tropics have been and how quiet they look like they were going to stay for a week or so. And it looks like the changes that we're seeing now are going to continue to become exacerbated. And we're going to look at a pretty steady erosion of this dry air mass here. And at that stage of the game, that opens the entire main development region up where systems can migrate in east to west fashion across the main development region, get into the West Atlantic, get into the Eastern Caribbean, and then can really become some major headaches. So as we push forward, we're going to take a look over here at the National Hurricane Center's official product. This is the 5-day graphical tropical outlook, and this was posted at 3 p.m. Atlantic or 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And this here highlights that system I was showing off the coast of Nicaragua. Now, this is cited as having a 0% chance through 48 hours, a 20% chance through 5 days. So this needs to be watched, and it's good to see that they're seeing it as well. This is something that was loosely discussed in yesterday's video. However, the outlook now representing it, probably going to give it a little bit more airtime and a little bit more consideration. Moving on, we're going to take a look at temperatures over the Gulf of Mexico and highlight several things here. Notice that this here is really starting to warm up, and that's good effective warming of the Gulf of Mexico deeps. And also another note of mention is this little tongue of cooler water that we were talking about was associated with the loosely organized tropical system that entered the extreme south coast of Texas on Sunday. And you notice here, compared to yesterday, that is starting to blend out. And that was what I was discussing yesterday, is that the sea surface temperatures in this area will recover quite quickly. And that looks like that is beginning to take place. However, even despite these cooler waters, anything that gets into this area here and goes through here would remain untouched and would definitely have some good energy associated with it. However, all the latent warmth available down in here, anything that gets into this area with reduced wind shear and the proper meteorological dynamics in place can really take on a life of its own and become a major headache for somebody. Next, we're going to take a look at the upper ocean heat content, and we notice that this has brightened a lot through the Caribbean over the past 24 to 36 hours. Also, we're starting to see a lot more in the way of brightening across the Gulf of Mexico deeps. That is problematic. That is a big problem, especially considered a Central American gyre has the potential to break off pieces of energy that could spit out into the Caribbean and then eventually make their way into the Gulf of Mexico. And then also the other area that we highlighted and mentioned down here, especially this, is definitely showing some warmer values as well today. So the cards are on the table and the game is being played, and now it's just a matter of time and a waiting game. All right, take a look at the tropical hazards and benefits outlook from the Climatological Prediction Center, and we are looking at this week, which is August 17th through August 23rd, and nothing noted here. Starting to see a little bit in the way of precipitable water values, above average rainfalls coming off the coast of Africa. That is indicative of emerging systems that could take on a life of their own across the tropical Atlantic. So this is also telling the tale that I've been going on and on about for the past 24 to 48 hours. And then you take a look at the week of August 24th through August 30th, and now you're starting to see some values representing a moderate potential for tropical cyclone formation over that time frame. So things are happening, albeit slow, but things are happening. And I think that the on-ramp is going to be a relative faster process as we try to achieve highway speed limits. So moving forward, it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your head. I know we've been quiet up to this point, but it definitely looks like we might be on the cusp of that coming to an end. Next, we're going to take a look at the 850 millibar vorticity product from the 0Z GFS. And we're going to take a look at this and move through the period, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. See some of these vorticity pockets that are emerging off the coast of Africa and into the Western Atlantic. And there we go. And we start to see a little bit of cyclonic tendency here. And you're not really seeing a high vorticity value, but if you take a look, you can definitely see a pocket there with respect to the isobars shown. But as we move through this period, this takes on a life of its own. And keep in mind, there's more bleed over energy about to emerge off the western coast of Africa into the eastern Atlantic. And that is that is a system that a lot of these models are starting to signal could be a potential big headache down the road. And this is substantiated here as this gains organization very, very quickly as it emerges the coast of Africa. This one here looks like it blends out just a little bit of shear in place here. And that is going to should keep that at bay. Now, of course, that could change. This could take on a life of its own as well. But as for right now, the models have been pretty consistently representing this system here. And we're taking a look at that here. And we'll move forward. And this actually produces a very healthy tropical cyclone out in the middle Atlantic and pushes this across the Atlantic. And at the end of the period, per the GFS, which, like I said, this is not one of those things I put a lot of stock in, but this is a good tendency that we're seeing here. But as of the 1st of September, this looks like this is well on its way towards the mainland U.S., potentially the islands as well. So something to keep an eye on. This has been a fairly consistent rep over the past 24 hours, and more reps that we see that show these types of systems, we start to lend a little bit more credibility to them. We start to watch a little bit more closely and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this has a handle on something. So we're going to move forward here, and we're going to take a look at the euro, and we're looking at the same product, the 850 millibar cyclonic vorticity product. This is 850 millibars, so you're looking at about 5,000 or so feet off the ground relative to main sea level. We're going to play through this product as well, and as we notice, we come into the back of the run, and we start to see the same thing. Now, this is not out as far. This is Friday, August 26th. The GFS product runs out 384 hours. This product only runs out 242 times a day. But as we take a look at this and we factor for the time differential, you see this system we talked about, very broad, still present, but broad, and doesn't really look like it translates into much. However, if you take a look here off the coast of Africa, there you go. There's that system that's being repped out in here on the GFS at the 384-hour mark. So now this is two global ensemble members that are repping the same thing, and these are not associated in any way, shape, or form, and there's no cross-channel communication between those. So with dealing with this type of process, what you look at is you see two independent members and you start to see the same thing, and you really got to look at it and say, okay, maybe this does have some traction. So just something to kind of keep in mind as we move through the period. It definitely looks like the slumber for the Atlantic is coming to an end. And also of mention is this typically happens as well. Notice the Eastern Pacific, or the EPAC as we call it, is shut down. There's not a lot of tropical activity out there, if anything at all. And that usually allows the energy transfer to enter the Atlantic. And that's what really sparks up the Atlantic Basin. So we're going to move in and we're going to take a look at the ensemble products. And this represents each member of each model suite. This is the EPS. So this is the ECMWF, or the Eros ensemble members. And we're going to take a look at this here. And I like to look at this one first because this one's a little bit more in the way of conservative. And we take a look here and start to see a bunch of energy exiting the west coast of Africa into the eastern Atlantic. And whoa, hold on, what do we got there? You're seeing a lot of little low pressure centers being repped out here. And these are potential tropical systems from different members that we need to keep an eye on as we go through the period. Now, here's a whole nother host of these here, and if this translates and these continue in this track, these could be a big problem here. And this is something I've seen now for the past day to 2 days watching this, as this backside of this run has come into range. This is a pretty consistent rep. So it definitely looks like our quiet time is coming to an end. Next, what we're going to take a look at is we're going to take a look at the same product just for the GEFS, and this is the Global Ensemble Forecasting System. The GFS is Ensembles. And we take a look here and we blow through this real quick. And this one here obviously is a little bit more aggressive, but does have a little bit more in the way of attachment in real life scenario based off of my personal experiences. So we're going to take a look here, and we see a lot of activity. Look at the backside of the run, just blossoms in the Western Atlantic, the Eastern Caribbean, and the Gulf of Mexico lights up like a Christmas tree here. And this has pretty much been the expected play out as we look at the shutdown of the EPAC. And Eastern Pacific shuts down, not a lot of activity. That's a lot of cyclonic energy that can be transferred to other regions. So this is representing several large-scale systems that need to be watched. Now, obviously, again, I qualify this. This is in fantasy range. And these are each individual ensemble members. These little numbers are central pressures being repped by ensemble members that are out there. And any one of these could come true. And I mean, there's 50 some odd products that comprise the GFS. So these are just one member that are representing these. But the more that we see this helps lend to model consensus. So if you start to see a lot more like this big conglomerate right here, this here is suggesting, hey, you know what, there's a lot more members that are starting to suggest that there may be a system out there. So just something to kind of keep an eye on as we move forward. And we push through the backside of the run. And this here is of particular interest, even though it's the backside of the run. This is two members representing the exact same central pressure. We're not going to discuss that number because I don't want to put anybody in a heightened state of alarm that doesn't need to be, because this is fantasy range. But this is repping a very healthy system. Could this happen? It could. There's a lot of latent energy available in the Gulf of Mexico. The upper ocean heat content is remarkable. I mean, that's good. It's been relatively untouched. So this does have a basis in real world play out, and the models actually factor for what's going on, reconcile each individual meteorological input and say, hey, how does this play out as we move forward? Now, models are touchy as they represent how a particular meteorological situation will play out, provided every factor that the model has programmed is met in real world scenario exact. And that never happens, but sometimes they're close. And particularly when we get to this time of the year, we see a spike in the GFS's accuracy. It's really something that doesn't make a lot of sense, but as the meteorological patterns and climatological patterns, for that matter as well, come into play, the GFS has a tendency to really be able to close the padlock and say, okay, I've got a good feel for what's going on. So as we're in the transitional seasons, and we're in the beginning of tropical cyclone season, really anything that you see out of the GFS, you can take it with a grain of salt. However, when we get to the later portions, we get to the meat of the season, these products have a tendency to have a pretty good accuracy. So I can't completely discount this, albeit in fantasy range. It's merely eye candy right now. It's just something to look at, nothing ground in stone. But this definitely shows that the potential for something upcoming is there. And even whether or not these systems are here or not, this shows that the conditions across this entire area are favorable and things are ready to go. So this here, the tropics, especially with the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, I'm treating them like a loaded gun scenario. So it's not going to take much to do a lot with that type of latent energy available. So just something to keep in mind as we move forward through the period. I'll keep on top of the situation. I will do my absolute best to do another video tomorrow. I'm going to do it earlier, but it will still post at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. So stay tuned with us here. If you haven't given a like, if you haven't given a subscribe to the channel, please do that. That really helps me a lot on my side. And also ring the notification bell. It'll give you a notification every time a video is posted. All right. Till then, I will talk to y'all later. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Have a great evening.